Sanje Jodon Zoje Jonom no Chanjo Bandon Dani Jabroje Naye Jinzo Jebe Zonom Ni Jona Pinje Sanje Jomar Sanje Jodon Zoje Jonom Da Chanjo Morando Dani Jabroje Naye Jinzo Jebe Zonom Jindrola Pinje Sanje Jomar. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly, I take refuge until I attain enlightenment. Through the merit of practicing generosity and so on, may I attain Buddhahood for all the sentient beings. Okay. Now I think we are on the verse number 24 and 25th. I think we talked a little bit about the 24th last time, and I think we are on the 25th. The 24 is quite important. Towards Sheja Masamjang, given ni Ginarto, Giver Shasha Masamjang, Towa teaching, Giver 24, please.
Without thinking I should be angry, people become angry with no resistance. And without thinking I shall produce myself. Likewise, anger itself is produced.
It's really true that nobody wants to become angry. Somehow, cause and condition and something by the kind of their own force. Sometimes I love to call this, when I become angry, I always, not always, when I'm in the mood to do a practice, then it is good to accept. If somebody comes up and say, today you don't look good, you look possessed, then you won't like that kind of complaining, somebody saying that to you. But for yourself, it is much better to accept yourself, that if you feel like, yes, today I'm really possessed by this ignorance mind, through this ignorance mind. And then as we call the no resistance. Here, I think it will be a great to think for yourself. When you are angry at someone, you will always have an excuse. Like His Holiness said that many times in his teachings. His Holiness says in a very, very, very beautiful way. He says that we humans are not really not true, not truth,
honest, not very
not
honest.
Oh yeah, not very honest. If you are angry, and then once your anger goes down, and then you will say to other friends like, you will have so many excuses that you become angry, and but you will never give an opportunity to others. If somebody says, I'm really sorry, that if he brings his kind of excuse, your enemy's excuse to you, then you will never accept that. So for that reason, here Shantideva is trying to say, if your anchor is not from your own wish, and it is kind of through some excuse it is coming, then it's the same thing. The other person who is angry at you, he doesn't have any kind of wish to angry at you, but he has his kind of excuse, like you have your excuses. Uh, uh, for that reason, that's the way of His Holiness give, giving this kind of explanation. But here, Shantideva is saying kind of same thing, uh, but is saying that that enemy doesn't have a wish to become angry at you. That we shouldn't never forget this, because our main reason we are angry at our enemy is because we always feel in depth of our heart that it's not one time, two time, three time. It's too many times he has already done so many things to me. So now you are kind of clinging towards your enemy is uh, become so strong because of all these reasons. You feel like that he has something to harm me for sure. So that means he has a choice. It looks like in your kind of understanding, it looks like that enemy has a choice to not to become angry with you, not to harm you, but he is harming. That's in our kind of belief. But Shantideva, he is explaining that he doesn't have kind of a uh, wish directly, but somehow, due to the cause and condition, it comes up. That it's a very tricky to differentiate between this.
Rango meva maraperum, rango meva.
Rawa meba.
He has no control, he's no control over the situation. So
제상가 디 예와 제고에 nen가디 고랑기 니 지기여베 지기여레 젠드기 삼바여베 여레 이내 콩 할라 젠드기 삼바디 봐 아니 체도니니 쇼게 야랑네 손데 다 드링에 콜네 지게고 세 삼바주 여베 이나양 디 점불링 나로네 야코 지두 고랑 제베가로야 애니에 다디 카와도스나네 유 수직이요 말에 다 유던게 망부 저 초벌을 때네 아니 당보 초보이네레 뭐신기 요네레 메네레 두 시제다 아 지기 네바지야디 레온야다 아니 코기 고랑 셈나는 뭐지 저랑 통비가로 아주 통비가로 그럼 뭐지고 줘야지 내가도 치슈고 투드스나 따디레 아 라마메 토닝고요레스 라마메바티엔 귤텐 춤부레스 따딩아 저기 따디 디네마 가서래 중디 내가 좀 쳐도
So one of the main points of what's being said in this particular part of the text is that, you know, if we analyze what's going on in the situation between us and our enemy, if you say that, well, does our enemy wish to is our enemy harming us? Okay, you can say yes, they're harming us. Have they given rise? Have they cultivated the kind of wish to harm us? Is the harmful mind, harmful intent there? And you say, well, yeah. But how did that kind of harmful intent, a harmful mind arise? They didn't usually wake up. These people didn't usually sort of wake up first thing in the morning and start straight away by sort of, very specifically focusing on cultivating that kind of mind. It doesn't usually operate like that. Then it's not usually that any of us are really out there looking out for enemies. But what happens, the process is more like we have, the process of how the anger eventually arises relies on many conditions. So, then we may start out as friends and those who are close to us, and then eventually through causes and conditions, various causes and conditions, it gets to the point where, somebody can be unhappy and can't tolerate the very sight of us. But the main point that's coming out here in the text is that this this is out of their control. It's out of their control, and this uncontrollability itself relies on many causes and conditions.
Tadi nenga motuye di kechishu di samlo kwatangu tsuna korangi deba kendo yore deba kendo lebya diyan ane korangla rawa mindu sechi tadi gansu nye wudwa
Because nuba chegi duba geba di the wrong.
jala anjolo neba jeng deba yore chasang anzu jas labarwa
Yeah.
dindigi deba jeya diyan kola rawa mebe toni kigyoris.
So we definitely have to say that if we categorize someone as being our enemy, then we have to say that, of course, there's someone who is trying to harm us or has given rise to the intention to harm us. But it's very important to understand that the intention itself, not just the harm, but the intention itself has arisen in them, it's out of their control. It's a situation which is out of their control. The wishing to harm itself is out of their control.
Maybe in English better. I'm pretty sure most of you have received the teaching from His Holiness. Like a few days ago, he gave teachings on Heart Sutra. At that time, he mentioned about where Bodhisattva's life and which chapter we should focus on. And he talked a little bit about 6th chapter, and then he talked a little bit about the 8th chapter. When he talked about the 6th chapter, specifically, he said something like a hint to us, giving a kind of a hint to us. I think specifically our group, our small group. Just kidding. That's attachment. He said something about this solid mind, solid lotakbo. The word he used in the Tibetan is lotakbo. Uzu gyabje never sotubri. Yeah, Simon can help us. Sebe tanda digi sebegi sebe liu digi chupa digi liu chupa digi ani sem chakbo ranzo tape kondo sabe kable ya ta cha sedu chigi shibu chigi ta tsukdu ba yodi ni di lo chakbo de ani ribo mabu ji tangbe tone lo chakbo de udu chibu damne yodi di meba sotu udus.
So it's on said in this Heart Sutra teaching, specifically in relation to the 6th chapter on patience here, that the situation of anger and our enemies and the hard-minded literally in Tibetan it means lotrapa, which is sort of hard-minded sort of way in which we see our enemy is very solid, very concrete and solid out there. Using many reasons, sort of many counteractive reasons, we are able to eventually destroy it or make it non-existent. Lo trouble say digi ko kase digi pagigi parubudigi kase sutubadoshi imbare. So the hard, in Tibetan, literally lo trapo, the hard-headed mind, or it means literally that you see them as very sort of solid or concretely out there, existing very concretely or solidly out there. That's how it's sort of referred to in the Tibetan.
But maybe we can say, given an example about attachment and anger. Person who is really angry, in the mood, he is really angry, then maybe if his guru comes in front of him and say, don't be angry, bring patience on, maybe I'm like a kind of 100% sure he will not cool down like automatically. Um, that is one kind of our own experience, that at the time of our anger, how solid our the object or the enemy, the appearance of the enemy is. Now, if you are in a kind of in love, or you're falling in love, and then your friend, a very dear friend, comes to you, said, okay, you should break up with this person, that person is not really good in for you, and so on. You have a little bit of a capacity in your brain to listen to the conversation, but deep inside you won't listen, that's for sure. But somehow there is a chances you will listen to the person who is complaining about your love. But once you are angry, and there's no room to no room for uh, to someone to explain anything to you. And now on also uh, here I just want to emphasize how to connect that. Maybe Simon could help me with this. Uh, mm, and maybe also you remember His Holiness said something, uh, the real compassion is the compassion towards your enemy. That's what His Holiness give this gift to us to understand further. Why does he say that? Why? Of course, there is a compassion towards your and loved ones. Why it's not real? Why it's not 100% pure? And then why is you their compassion towards your enemies pure? That we have to always think. Um, Maybe if we think like this, let's remember the story that His Holiness most of the time he tells us, uh, that one Tibetan monk who lost his almost lost his life in the prison, and then he came to see His Holiness, and His Holiness asked him, uh, "Is there any kind of risk or danger or something?" And then he said, yes, there was one time danger that, and then His Holiness felt like maybe danger to his life, and then he ultimately said, not a directly danger to my the life, but it's more losing compassion to the Chinese. So now here, this moral of this kind of a beautiful example, that His Holiness has shared this experience of that monk. Uh, I think the erosion really uh, uh, destroys the, I think, the seed of our compassion. Okay. Uh, the, this let me decide. Because if we look at the three poisonous mind, 왜 three poisonous mind 왜 독숨. Simon, are you with me?
No, I lost you for a minute. I'm back.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, 독숨되다. 독숨
Oh,
is the
the
three
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 poisons.
poisonous.
The three poisons. Yeah, the three poisons.
Yeah. Uh, the, the attachment, the let's forget about the ignorance for the moment, okay? but the ignorance will never forget us. But for at this moment, let's forget about it for a moment. The put the compassion in between, and then think about the attachment, and then think about the anger. Uh, the compassion can go with the uh, attachment for sure, but the compassion can never go with the anger. And then on the top of that, not only this, and bringing a compassion towards someone that you really dislike, hate, it looks like once you made a friend again, but somehow it is a very, you build this relation with this person in a very on the fragile side, the cha
Kagi,
on the Java, the relation with that person uh, is so uh,
fragile, very fragile.
very
Right.
fragile. It's like on a thin ice you make the relation, so it will break very quickly. 제장래 사면 딘다. 먼저 디게 탄다. rāngwā mē bā, rāngwā mē bā tsaṁ tu mā sē, tā ngā dzū khōndzhō nīmī sāṁ tāṁ bē kāla. Pā chōng wō kī tsū lī yā, nē kī yā tē lī yā, ngā dzū lī nē kī yā tē, rāngwā mē bā mī ndū tsaṁ mā sē. An dī kāng lā, ngā dzū yāng gyō sāṁ tāṁ yā jī khāli tū sī tāp nā, anī chē zhāng kā, dō chā tāṁ yīng jī nyam tū 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 tē, dō chā tāṁ 가자 닝지다 셰당 남연념도 도움도스 디 타지지 디 인도zembe 디 모임비 좀 전에 하고 삼당 투나야 오요래 닝지당 아니 셰당니디 가르치는 념도 도요 말이스 아니 되네 개대 가란주다 배지 가르치는 것이나 아니 콘도 사차주 미지념도 가란주 청부지 나리안 청부샤베이나야 긴 중중지 쳐베이나 람상 거라 아니 콘로디 나만의 신치지 지금 림베게 뭐 임바 톱디간로 람상 거라 셈 나로래야 저와제기 슈 셈슈 베 균 슈kim부 시부지 얘기도 와 어디기 삼당 용도 아니 콘로기 닝진냐냐기 싸워 제디 지기여가 됐다. 삼로지 코한데 아니 닝지 매비나 아니 닌중 매바 닝지 매비나 천주 셈 매바 아르마 호시 삼라당야도 와 다제 생각 다디 맞좀 맞소네 누구 주거디 개심 부차야지 그래서 경고를 미치기 내 송년 소르시.
So in relation to the importance of the 6th chapter, His Holiness was really expressing the great importance of the 6th chapter. There's a lot of kind of stages of there's a kind of lot of kind of entailment, stages of entailment which come out of the importance of chapter 6. So we have to when we're thinking about the faults of anger, as here we are in this section of the text about the faults of anger, and we're so imagine someone who is causing harm to us or has harmful intent towards us, and then we not only do we have to think that they're not in control of themselves, but we also have to there's also an added layer of thinking that has to go on top of that. And that added layer of thinking is to do with what I've just spoken about how compassion has a way to conjoin itself with attachment, but there's no way that compassion can conjoin itself with anger. And this we need to sort of think about and try, need to think about this and try to decide what the reasons are ourselves for this, but as to why it is that compassion cannot go alongside anger. And if we take as an example of this, a situation where we've had a sort of harmful situation with another person, and then even if we were to somehow to kind of make up as friends, but that the previous situation of the anger between us makes it very, it means that for that person again for the situation to again get inflamed with anger can happen not slowly but very quickly, and the anger can come very strongly. So we can see here how the cause of the anger, the process of anger has caused the weakening and deterioration of compassion. And so actually, as we build out of the importance and the faults of anger, as Hans was saying about the 6th chapter, what happens is if you've got anger causing the weakening or deterioration of compassion, and then following the entailments with that if you have no compassion, then there's no way to get renunciation. And if there's no way to get renunciation, there's no way to get bodhicitta. Then you can see how that many stages of the process rely on looking at the faults of anger.
Now the verse number 35. Nyeba jini tamje dang diwa number na zoba ti yun jenji doble chung rang yeba ma yin mos. 25.
All mistakes that occur and all the various kinds of wrongdoing arise through the force of conditions. They do not govern themselves.
Now here, I think the most important for us to our focus here should be more to how to believe in the process of the cause and the result. Right? 제정가 도시에도 라완 단다 라완세 데 라완 기 커뮤니티 소야게 라완데 아니 주디 겐로 된 뭐봐 아니 코랑 가리 제시임바 자디게 가리 콜레 라완 예베 토네 직네 기기 무슨 로고 소와데 레원도 잠베 다 디기 라완 메바 아니 주디 겐로 된 연구 요바데 세부 야고자 하 고야라 다탄다 디네마 체벌 주베기 랍디 니슈 가자 단다 쇼로가다 니슈 저루도 잡된데 대주 상마도 아니 단다 가르치는 순구 열시도 조 아니 규단 지분이 아니 초차나 규단 지분이 규단 지부스 로알로 송도 그때 규단 건다 규단 겐이 초차비나 아니 지부디 중얼 네버레스 다 딜라야 아니 지금 상제 레장 믹스 요마레 찬주 선발레 믹스 요마레 아니 달라야 믹스 요마레 초골레 믹스 요마레 세치 어디 디나 송도와 다디 직주나나.
So in terms of these coming verses, particularly verses 26 and 27, but what we're talking about here is when we talk about Rawan, being independent or self-controlled or self-powered, what we're talking about, when we talk about that, we would talk about something which doesn't rely on causes and conditions. But then if we take the opposite of that, which is Rawan Meba, that being not independent, and in this sense that we talk about an enemy not having control, then something which doesn't have independence has to rely on causes and conditions. And so what happens in the next, particularly the next two verses of 26 and 27, is where what we're trying to what is trying to express is why are these verses put in here. What they're trying to express is that the sense that that things rely on causes and so things are not independent and rely on causes and conditions, and the main point is that if all of the relevant causes and conditions are completely accumulated together, then it's certain that the result will proceed from that, and therefore I've written something down, I can't even read it. And so we have, so you have
Which one?
so after the cause never the good and gain the sobi energy never the chongores and the chi oh yeah, and whether it's I can't read my writing, whether it's the bodhisattvas or the Buddhas or friends or enemies, there's no special get out clause for anybody with this. I'm going to learn English next week.
Dicheta rangwa yoga ma yinos ta nga zo namgyu tsini gu shung na lo la gyujin shaman jen se chi gyujin rangwa jen tsawa ni sung ma ro gyujin shaman jen se chi ta tsidi tenke ba de tenke de gyumzen de che zanga gyudi cheba ina jubudi kenye res cheba nyeba res ta jen da chogu res en jen ma chona ji ma res che zang gyudan jen su lo wa song chi odi ji kyang ju
And so you know, we talk in the kind of the debate manuals, we talk about how you know, we talk about things which are literally, the literal translation is other power, things which are other power. They're not independent or self-powered, they're other powered, have to rely on causes and conditions. Shenmon, it's called Shenmon Shen. So what is other powered is powered by its causes and conditions. And if the complete causes and conditions accumulated, then it's definitely effect will arise. If you haven't accumulated the relevant causes and conditions, then it's not certain that the result will arise. And this is how it's said in the kind of debate manuals.
nishu zazhu ba, jiannam choba teta jian jebar chashi samba me teje te yang da je je samba yoba ma yin no 26 please.
These conditions that assemble together have no intention to produce anything, and neither does their product have the intention to be produced.
Tanda in the rice seedling sutra, when Buddha explained about the
12 links.
Your maybe
Your maybe.
Yeah. Jen sumna lo ne. Nube jen. Ani kasa mitabe jen shibe. Ani tanda your maybe jen se juwa.
Conditions, yeah, unshakable conditions.
Unshakable
or unmoving your meba.
Your maybe right.
Unshakable or
아주 지시 되게 우와 말에 원주로 수 시스템 요원도 땅에 채워 말해서 해 주봐.
Oh yeah.
되게 그러와.
네.
제가 단다 디급수 단다 설류 장면도 있고서 아니 제가 머리반에 손대 미게 가서 그래. 아니 그시 지리 때인데 된데 양라 중님만 드시 좀 그거야. 아니 뺄을 잡지. 아니 배 양라 중년이 마송 주잖데 아니 가서 그래 다 사다 아니 신당 되네 배 지금 추다 류다 저를 빼잔 손도 전에 아니 사변마 선한만 대비 갑라야 아니 사변 그 맞답송 냠베기 gemgu 말이스 사 아니 누구 집에 가봐야 당아 사변에 계속 삼야 지금 사변게 얘기 누구 집을 제비 세기 요말 삼바 요말 에세 송요 되게 내가 저 가르쳤으나 뒤양 그 닝지부터 요르데 네 닝지부 단다디 가리고 오고 있어도 저 규대게 초선은 그도 깨줘야지만 또 저기 삼도 셔봐 저기 가사 신지기 삼도 원도 요왕을 당치 다 깨버 제주고 그냥 란주 지딩 꺼봐 본 되게 놀라 아니 로 요왕은 당치도 셔봐 좀 버렸어 배는 닝지부 요르바 장빙비기 닝지무 요래 단다 아니 가사디 아 kunzu da jamben badi di kelling ma ba so re jigin ko bo kelling ma ri na ya kwarche ur sne jum mebal den chung bo se du jambe a zo pena shema sig lo di tema bi green bi di gorgor be dinalo la chu packet kya sha ni di yor ba packet ning jum shi bu jabi do wa ta ko bi ji gi na dinalo la dog do shi nga ji du ya yor ba 어디서 상말로 쇠들이 shakin 요 말스 안디 가르 좀 버렸나 중화기 아니 내단 될 때는 좀 버려야지
그죠.
드디어 시작이요 봐 제장가 다 중화래 드디어 쉬고 삼삼 요 말스 중에 디스도 삼 요 말 어느 권조 다 지금 거법이 권조 되겠네요 어디 권조가 드디어 쉬고 삼삼 게 좋은 말 규대 차바 잠실 때는 좀 버려야지 또 부득이 메시지 문에 들어봐. 다단다 다 난디고.
So, so in the so in terms of we're talking about here about causes and conditions. So in the sort of some of the Indian tenet systems, the non-Buddhist Indian tenet systems, they talk about how the world is created by, say, Indra or Brahma. In one trick is Indra, I think, and you know, by the mind of Indra or Brahma going before, sort of the world is created as a process, from a process of that. Now in the Rice Seeding Sutta, it explains the kind of Buddhist way of thinking about these things, where the Buddha, you know, so we talk about in the Rice Seeding Sutra, the main kind of topic is the 12 links of dependent origination, with the circle of the 12 links proceeding from ignorance and then around through to birth and death. Now in that, an example is given of that, a more simplified example is given of us to give us the idea, and it talks about how, you know, in order for a seed to grow into a sprout, then all these kind of conditions are required, such as the soil, the fertilizer, water, light, etc., and then of course the seed. But at the time when, if we were to plant seeds into a fertile soil, at the time that we do that, our mind thinking our mind which thinks I'm planting the seeds, or I'm going to plant seeds to give rise to the sprout or the result, is not the thing which it's not our mind thinking that which causes the it causes the result, the sprout to be produced. And so, and it's also not the seed thinking I'm going to produce a sprout. It's also not like that. So what is the main what, you know, so that's this is a very beautiful example, but what's the main sort of takeaway from that very beautiful example? And again, the example is showing us that it is the accumulation of causes and conditions which necessarily produces its results. And you know, in certain in other traditions, they suggest, like, you know, they propound a sort of creator of the world, who's, you know, who and it's the mind of the mind of the creator which precedes the creation of the world, and that's how they explain it. Now in a very early Indian non-Buddhist system called the Charvakas, they didn't accept, they essentially accepted things as being produced by no cause. But the way they spoke about that was, for instance, they gave the example of peas in a pod, and the arrangement of how the arrangement of peas were arranged in a pod, and they found it absurd that that would have a very that was created by the mind of something, by the mind of a creator God. And so how they explained those kind of creations, where it was a kind of natural situation and procedure of the elemental forces which caused those things to happen. But in Buddhism, we take, again, a slightly different approach to this, and we say that it's not the Buddha's mind that proceeds. It's the aggregation, the mere meeting of the causes and conditions, all of the causes and conditions coming together, which is what produces the results. This is a sort of Buddha's uncommon way of presenting things. So there's no sense of a creator of the world's mind sort of preceding the creation of everything. That's a very important point to take away from this.
You should subdue us tradition. So share can't do it. Daja Taba Kayan, but Tini Dani Jung Che to something Juames. Yeah, 27.
1 minute, Rinpoche. Excuse me.
Yeah.
So regarding the stanza 26, so is it also basically telling us, well, it's there, that doesn't mean you have to do anything? Does it refer to this? I mean, those causes and conditions are there, or what's happening is happening, but you don't have to jump on it or grasp on it. You can just observe it, and just like in meditation, just, observe it, and it will do what it has to do, but it goes when it goes. Does it refer to that as well?
Alex, do you mean in terms of the Buddhist presentation or the other presentations?
In terms of the Buddhist presentation, because so they assemble together, they don't have intention to produce anything. So for me, it seems it says in the kind of way of, they're there, right? It's good, you see them, you see what's happening, but nothing else is to be done. Just, they came there, they will go again.
Go their way. They'll go their way, right?
Thank you.
The verse 26, Alex ki verse 26 the tabina, and the kongi koyadiki, na gudangen and consutaran also be in again, gudangen tadaran so be in a double the gig it is, and then the chairs came in dus, kataran just dagi chair, namni yeme she chair, any dagi chair, any involvement shed the chair magobadoshi, that this koya this tongu say.
Okay, yeah, I agree with you, Alex. If all those cause and condition, if it sounds like already, it's already planned, right? It's already written. Like we say, the luck is kind of written already, so no change. So like this, if it is like this, then no reason to think to get out of suffering. And when you suffer, you don't, it's stupid to complain for. But here in the Buddhist, the concept of when we talk about law of causality, it's Buddha himself said, who makes the karma? It's your own intention, your mind. Derba, Chesanga, Dani, Dadi, Ngundi, Shen Sunshin Gwendu Juru said, you are your own protector, Derba. Protector say, protect the Sumbikijamares, protect Chemache said, Legundit. You gewa jutumdo, gewa the social soyachita, and Dungi Chungdo Yomarete, Dungi in Bahak Koje, and the Machena, Dungi Gumares.
So when it says you are your own protector, it doesn't mean like sort of protecting yourself from everything in that kind of sense. What it means is, protecting yourself from everybody or something. It means protecting yourself in relation to the law of karmic cause and effect. So in the sense of if you, in order to to achieve happiness, to accumulate virtue in order to attain happiness, and also by identifying suffering in the core, because so identifying suffering, and then also the causes of suffering and not engaging in the causes of suffering. That's how we protect ourselves.
So the first method of the lower capacity, not harming others, okay, and practicing the 10 virtuous actions and not doing the 10 negative actions. So that is the reason to have the next life better rebirth, right?
To have a better rebirth.
Better rebirth. If we did some kind of negative actions, so then that becomes kind of a condition that in the next life that we might have a strong possibility to us to have get into the lower realm. But when we practice this 10 virtuous action only, that Buddha didn't say that it will get rid of the suffering. He never said that. Okay. So in order to get rid of the suffering, he talked about the Four Noble Truths. So that's why the lower capacity, then once we become the middle capacity, and then Four Noble Truth, that's why we are studying this, to get out of the suffering. So then all the great other the masters of Hindus and then other religion, people who are so committed to their own teachers and then their teachers,
The teachers.
and who are there on the spiritual path,
the founders of their religion,
the founder of the religion. So next life, to have a better life, they don't need to become a Buddhist. But then the difficult part is why we should become a Buddhist. The one reason is, now Buddhists talk about we have in our hand to get rid out of the suffering, which we say that we can take out the seed of the suffering. For that reason, right? And then we should be very proud. Oh, I'm a Buddhist. You don't need to say it. You have to always appreciate. That's why His Holiness Dalai Lama says, oh, emptiness, emptiness, and bodhicitta, bodhicitta. That, and so we move on. Right? 做我写着看的，但大家大伙看赢不？第二单呢，中学是切度中学300米，他得他让这下。他记录吧，他做的他长线把了送过要的，长线把给拿到呢，他长线把的他主的嘛拿到呢，他唐不的亚个拿到了呀，主的嘛唐学的下的个有啥，第来的呢？다 저 장진 거기 다원도 수들라 되네 다 디몽고 총이 있어 봐 그래서 우리 떠르마 망고 총부를 봐 제장 거 장진 봐 자와도 차야 도와라 다 개체슈디 단다 뭐 반den 다와 차고 송분한 신체제 조금 디조 장전배 다와 이내리 다 지기 지르비 다와 이내리 또 상마 용구에게 내가 쪼르데 근데 독서디 가르스나 다 딱과 인구도 우세치 다 딱과 멤버이나 다 내가 지슈들이다 디 야구시비죠 삼당톰나 다 딱과 멤버이나 아니 ngaran 주게 레 컨디지 제베이나 양 레세들다 레세들다 조 컨디지 제베이나 디부 차사메 차루도 세치 삼로지겨 남바상 예베게 다 딱과 이메이나 아니 다다 풍분히 버르는 자와샤투요 말에 다다 레 제바분이 버르는 자와샤투도 시제 자와를 삼바 쉬지 당요 다장 지기 장전박이 춘비기 다 따반도 긴족이 다 따반 만드나 아니 다 아니 풍부 주원나시 풍부도 스매바 차반나시 다데 매바도 차로 그랬어 라베이나 아니 다게 오 그런 라안로베이나 아니 안좀만 손이 규디치나 저부디 연구를 해야 돼 계제 셔사라고 말했어 다디 계제디 내가 전부 인장 이제장 우주전에 다 따고 되고 얘기네 룩디네 차버마도 신 다고 있네 이미 다고 있네 개발시라게 해요 말봐 다 군주 내가 치슈데 다 따고 마이나 배사그리 해야 될 아주 남바상한테 탐지기 이런 아주 다 최바지 인생인데 탐지기 다 따고 되고 얘기 내가 가을 도샤선 단다 디기 치루버도 다 따고 되긴 렐라버드 제점도가 시부지 개발 전부라도가 제장가 딩아 저기 이지미지 상로 토바게 구두스
So these this verse is dealing with the what they call the outsider tenets, and we have to be really careful with these. Sometimes people, we shouldn't think that they're really sort of easy systems to refute, and we really need to sort of raise doubts about the points that are made by them, and to think about them very clearly, because they're actually very sort of detailed explanations. So. Probably the first system that arose in the Indian Indian non-Buddhist tradition were probably as a kind of cohesive set of tenets was probably the Samkhya school, and they were probably the first on the main one, and then probably the tenet systems of the others probably arose out of the Samkhya system, the most important point to think about this is whether it's the Charvakas, the Samkhyas, the Jains, whatever system of these sort of non-Buddhist Indian tenet systems. The main point, what we really have to raise the doubts and think about is, they insist that there has to be a permanent self, and we have to think about why that is, and they insist that there has to be a permanent self because. If there wasn't a permanent self, then a karmic cause and a karmic they wouldn't be able to find a relation between a karmic cause and a karmic result. They would be essentially they wouldn't be the same person. Ganza chig me the core gudan deba the do ganza daba mayina konse gudan deba the ganza lokadi ganza chigi ganza lokade deba. Yeah, so the result would ripen upon someone who was a different person from the person who created the cause. So, and in Buddhism, of course, we say that you can't have there can't be a permanent self. And the reason why the Buddhists say that is because if you had a permanent self, then you couldn't posit a relationship between the self and the aggregates of that self. And also you couldn't posit a relationship between karmic cause and a karmic causal cause and effect relationship. So you couldn't posit that. So for the Samkhyas, the self if you lost the kind of entity of the self, then there would be no place for them. There would be no, this permanent entity. Konsul kasade tape nu laduna ani gansaki kechi samindua direo. Gansa tape nu wajeo.
간사기 뭐
Yeah.
간사기 뭐 어디 징로나스 간사기 뭐 어디 직세 기시오.
Oh yeah. So in terms of, so they also, they have a problem. If there's no permanent self, they have a problem because it's very visible, it's very manifestly obvious that the aggregates eventually are destroyed. And if you didn't have a permanent self, then you would lose the entity. Once the self itself would also, the entity of itself would also be lost or destroyed, and therefore they would find no place or no way to talk about a kind of instance of the person. So this is how they insist very strongly that there has to be, for this reason, that they insist very strongly that there has to be a permanent self or person. And this is actually really it's a really tough argument, and it's something that, as I say, these tenets are not, these outsiders' tenets are not easy to refute, and we have to really raise doubts and think about them in a very detailed manner. This is very important.
다단데 참들라 디지글람나 텐죠. 아주 남샤준도 미다보 공부요 봐. Normally we practitioners we say and we think about impermanence. Okay. 당아란조 남샤준도 미다보 삼로 땅야디 아니 그대로 비슷한 거 하는 거죠. 일단 망치교기 치워 삼단 게 어렵다. 시그레 있어. 딱 선이 거두심이 하고 말에 세선로 지르와. 다다들 지르와. 다디 괜히 시주임바당 거두심이 디 제야되다. 지금 처바 추치 치르바 쪽에 켈링그레 아니 치르바의 켈링그레 처 케멜링에서 정확해도 봐. 다 치르비기 아니 디제기 지게 다다고스를 디제 주어내가 지금 부두스 가두는 데디고 디제라고요 말해. 다저 균을 삼아당 거. 균라. 균을 삼두다는 여러 차고 쉬차 그래. 다딩 알아도 나고 상한 제가 줄래. 이제 양내 양도 삼아당 계절에. 지장가 균을 삼아당 쓰도 점배 다 가상기 나다 드링기 나 세티 단다 까마카시 중요한데 게지시에 되니 게 나다 지게 세공 룸치에다 아니 단다 게지시에 되니 세공 룸치니 버루 저와도 삼단 거요 딘저 다 에디지 줄다 고지 망타티야
So in terms of asana, a practice of meditating or engaging with not emptiness, with impermanence, then how do we really think about it when we're meditating on impermanence? So often what we'll think about is, it's certain I'll die. I don't know whether I will die tomorrow. I don't know the causes of my death, and I don't know when I'll die. I could die tomorrow. This kind of thing. This is often how we think about it. But this is accepted by the outsider sort of Hindu philosophical tradition. It's accepted by scientists. Accepted by most people. So we have to have a slight, what we have to think about is more like, for instance, with the outsider schools, when they're talking about a permanent self, what they're talking about is a continuum of the self. So this is a very important point to get across, is that and actually for Buddhist practitioners, we often it's a point that we need to constantly think about and investigate. It's for instance, how do we posit the continuum of the self? And so yesterday, the self of yesterday proceeding into the self of today. So for instance, a few minutes before, there was a Serkong Rinpoche, there was a form of Serkong Rinpoche who was saying something a few minutes before, and now there's a different kind. There's Serkong Rinpoche now, and there's a Serkong Rinpoche who was speaking a few minutes before. Now, how do we nanzu doa digi kandas tukure dikejeo doa. Yeah, so how do we posit the relationship in Buddhism? Buddhist people need to think long and hard and seriously about the continuum of the self and how we posit the relationship between a previous moment of a person and the present moment of a person.
The continuum di kejadi gyun se de ma de ngala ani tanda second kashi nyane keji shinyen di ngati tanda nga keji shinyen di rebe slana gyun le sanma danche rebe dana ran zolo lenjela ran zolo lenjela re samtang re taji ine chumden digi tajeje di mare sombre 당기 second 기기년 계제 신인데 second 니버간 계제 신인데 말에 송래.
네.
디 참나 따고 자 그래 송래 봐. 다디 인도선배 디 메나 아니 니 계제 니버 신인데 계제 당부 신인데면 수레라나 당부디에 말했어. 디 니버 삽도 깨버렸어. 말매 살게 했다. 디디 다 신의 계시야 봐. 디제도 아니 원하다 아니 단지 신인데 단다 말했으면 아니 간대 중으로서 어따디 켈렌 투르 켈렌단디 만다 켈렌 거지 가진스나 균을 된지 아니 레스 제지 셰어마도 디 레스 자원이나 sometimes 말이스 다 균주도 스토딩이 선럽지 레스 아니 페샤도 출샤와
야
추기 추도 스타드 선배 이거 간에 추디마 파고도 선배 유도 선배 어 추데 단대 밥대샤 가상의 추 가라도 드린 추디에 도스라 그래데 이내 가상 추 도스에 추디 단다 통야 거려 거려 다 단다 가와래디요 어딜 빼샤로 다다 디시류 다 치루가 디칼레 가고요 아주 나와상지 원래 디칼레 가고도 와
몰라
다 치루가 딜레 칼레 가요래
칼레 치로파 코론즈기 남주기 남샤디 칼레 가고
어디 다 간사 따고 만드나 아니 균게지 시고도스 균게지 도 말했다 코 말했으면 가르치기 어렸어야 돼 아주 셈나는 리기도 와 대기도 나 말했으면 삼는 남상 지금 리기도 와
알레 오레 데 콘즈기 셴의 쇼기문도 와
So
so we've used the word the continuum here and in talking about a continuum of the self. Now if we ask the question, okay, if the person a few seconds before ourself a few seconds before and ourself now, are they the same thing or not? Are they the same person or not? And our innate kind of grasping mind is going to answer, our innate mind will answer, yes, they're the same thing. And it would be totally decisively answer, they are the same person. But the Buddha himself has decisively stated that they're absolutely not the same thing. They're separate persons. And this is the point where, this is the point where the outsider schools really find it difficult to cope with what the Buddhists have said, because so we say that in a first moment there's one particular person, and in the second moment, if there's a different person, then we kind of ask, well, who are they? It's like it's in Tibetan, it says Narme Sadhugeba. They didn't exist before, and they've suddenly been newly produced. So who the hell are they? Who the hell is this person? And so then the Buddhists bring in this sense. So from the Buddhist perspective, the person in the first moment, the Buddhist in the person in the second moment are completely different people. But so how do we make sense of how do the Buddhists make sense of this? They bring in the aspect of continuum of the self. So if we take an example of this, watching a sort of a waterfall, and you say, oh, there's, watching the water fall, but we don't in front of our eyes, and there the waterfall is there, right, for us to see as a waterfall. But we don't say, oh, yesterday the water that fell yesterday is falling now. We never think, we know that doesn't happen, and today's water is falling now, but yesterday's water isn't falling now. Yesterday's water has already fallen and gone. And so so the outsider schools feel very uncomfortable about this idea, and that's why, and that sort of uncomfortableness, based on that uncomfortable, that's how they feel that there has to be a permanent self. That's why they konzu de dabe gansai ki shago bi jumsin diria ko geching nibala mena.
어디래 다
Yeah,
뭐
yeah,
어디와 뭐 코란티 말했어
yeah,
뭐 로가르슬나
yeah.
그나 세겐 당부 간사기 뭐보다 세겐 니베 간사니 뭐로 로가 차르잖아
Yeah.
어디시 그랬어.
Yeah, so they just can't cope with the idea that if the entity of the person in the first moment is completely different from the entity of the person in the second moment, they can't cope with that, and that on the basis of that, that's why they come up with the philosophy of a permanent self.
Okay. Now please think about this. Today we stop here, and then your homework will be please think about 다다도 벽에 나가면 소리. 자장가 반된 러빈 시발라 친구기 아니 라마메바 아니 샤단께 말이야 아니 파르비기 아니 라마메비치 아니 수술이야 마가바 아니 수술 가절 네바 두스께바 연구요래 라마요 말이지 라마메바 송차바다 디 주 다가나라야 아니 단다 치료비 따와 아니 라마세디 라마세 규진 줄 뒤도 될 때네 때 먹어봐 라마와세 계제도 냠도야 드야디 버르려야 아니 나 지금 아주 마소네 참자를 때 간디스트로서 뒤지나서 공부시하고 그랬어.
So your homework is to kind of join together or make a relationship or sort of make a connection between where previously where Shantideva was talking about how for a person who for another person who is has become doesn't like us or wishing to harm us, that they are that person has no control, that they're out of control, and that they have they're out of control of the causes and conditions, are out of their control for their anger. And so, sorry, I said that the wrong way. So that the person who harms us or doesn't like us, he talks about how they have no independence, or they're in a sense they're out of control, is a better translation. But in this section here, and in this section here, where we talk about the outsider's views, we're saying that we're talking about a form of independence, or independence which doesn't rely on causes and conditions. And so your homework is to make a kind of, to join these two together, or to make a relationship or connection between these two sections, in terms of being someone harming us being out of control of with their anger, and the sense of an independence as presented in the outsider tenet systems.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone. Maybe the Champa Chumbela, can you do the dedication prayer in English?
Sure. So in the Essential Serkong group, dedication prayers. Having thoroughly investigated in accord with all that I've heard, day and night, through the four reasonings, mind born of reflection on these topics of contemplation, may this discernment sever all doubts. In the land encircled by snow mountains, you're the source of all happiness and good. All-powerful Chenrezig Tenzin Gyatso, please remain until samsara ends. In all my lives, never separated from perfect gurus, I enjoy the magnificent Dharma. By completing the qualities of the grounds and paths, I quickly attain the state of Vajradhara. I fully dedicate all these virtues to be able to train just like the hero Manjushri who knows reality, and just like Samantabhadra as well. I fully dedicate all my roots of virtue with a dedication praised as the best by the all gone beyond victorious ones of the 3 times in order to have good conduct. With my heart going out with great compassion in whatever direction the most precious teachings have not yet spread, once spread have declined, may I reveal this treasure of happiness and aid.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
See
Rinpoche.
you. See you next Wednesday.
JJ.
Stay safe.